the stop on 4th and 11. Ewers takes a shotgun snap. He's back to pass. Pressure coming. Throws a fade. Yeah! We're going to Houston! Knocked it away! Elijah Jackson knocks the ball away. The Huskies are heading to Houston. Tony! Husky Nation! Elijah Jackson! Knocks it away, and Washington is headed to Houston to play the Michigan Wolverines for their first national championship since 1991.
Well, Happy New Year, my friends. Rip City Drive with Dwight Chad kicking out 2024 with you. I mean, Godfather, I thought last night, yesterday and throughout the night was a perfect ending to a phenomenal college football season. And all I could think about after those two games ended was how much better it's going to be next year when we have a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, for sure. One whole extra week of games. Actually, 2 extra weeks, right? Yeah. 4 teams now, 12 teams in. That'll take 2 extra weeks. Because the first round, 4 teams have a bye. So it's going to be really fun. I hope it's as balanced as these 4 teams were this year.
And by the way, credit the committee, and I really don't care how many weeks they take to play those games, whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, it's going to be awesome because you're going to have more teams playing for something that matters, which means less players jumping in the portal, and they'll be sticking with their teams because they're going to be playing meaningful games. But props to the committee for doing the right thing and making sure they put 4 quality teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Not the most deserving and all this nonsense. Put the 4 best teams in. You could argue that Georgia should have been in there. I would make that argument. But the 4 teams we got provided us with the best day of playoff football we've had ever since they moved to the playoff. Both games were sensational. Both games came down to the final moment. And I have no doubt that after what we saw yesterday, the 2 best teams are playing for the national championship next week in Houston. And I love that, man. It was so much fun to sit through that action because I was gripping at the end of both games. One went into overtime, and then somehow through an act of God, Texas had a chance to win that game at the end. I mean, riveting finishes for both games.
Yeah, they were great. And really, I was so impressed, really, with Washington. I really was, Chad, and I like the way they've approached their whole season. And they're undeterred. They're relentless. They just keep playing no matter what. I like them a lot. And then I have to say, I did not realize how good Michigan was. They're better than I thought they were. They really are.
Well, there's a reason why people think they're going to set the record for players drafted into the NFL this year, because look at the roster, look at the line of scrimmage, look at their defensive backs. That's a team that is loaded and ready to go out and compete for a championship. And they showed it last night. Physical. Not too often you can say that about a Big Ten team that lines up with Alabama and pushes them around.
Yeah.
How about that?
No, that was amazing. I was shocked. I mean, actually, the Crimson Tide were not as good as I thought they'd be. I was very underwhelmed by their quarterback. I thought Nick Saban did a great job to keep the game close, really. It looked for a while like they were going to get run off the field by Michigan.
Well, I thought Alabama was exactly what they had been throughout the year, where they have been doing enough to work around their quarterback situation. Yeah. They tightened up their defense in the second half. They have terrific coaching, and Nick Saban's a witch. And they were in a great position to win that game, and really on a couple of occasions, one play from winning the game. I mean, they took control in the second half, and Michigan made great plays down the stretch. I thought it was phenomenal.
Well, Michigan's special teams just about gave the game away. Real close.
Yeah, very tough to watch for a Harbaugh coach team to see the special teams in a complete disarray. And this is why we talk about football all the time. Offense is a third, defense is a third, special teams is a third. And when you have 1/3 of your unit that's a disaster, it can cost you a game.
Yeah, and they'd been good on special teams all season, from what I understand. And usually that's a reflection of, the depth of your talent. I always figure if you got a lot of really good players, your special teams will be better because those guys are probably pretty good players too, and they end up on special teams kind of by default.
I think what happens too in these games, and Michigan definitely is loaded with talent across the board, but we have to remember these are just kids.
Yeah.
And when you get kids in big moments like this, regardless of how well the coaches have done, sometimes the sphincter tightens and you make mistakes, especially in special teams when it comes to a hold or it comes to a big situation at the end of the game where you got to field a catch. Those things become a little bit tougher for certain people in that type of moment because you never know how a 20-year-old is going to react to that type of stage. In a Rose Bowl, in a big moment.
Well, sometimes the coaches get a little tight, too. I've noticed that over the years.
Well, look at the way the game started. Michigan was tight to start that game.
Yeah.
And then as they started to loosen up, they played much better football. But the result was awesome. Great games, great action. I can't wait until they expand the playoff. We'll get to more on Michigan and Texas in just a moment. The kickoff for the title game next Monday is set for 4:30, which means the game will actually start probably around 5. But it's on ESPN. It's going to be down in Houston. How was your New Year's Eve? I wasn't with you, or we didn't have a chance to hang out because I took off out of town, but did you have a good time?
Yeah, we did. There was a little bit of a function at the club that we belong to, and they had a band and a nice dinner and all that.
At the golf club?
Yeah,
nice.
So we went to that, and we enjoyed ourselves. It was good food, and we had a great time. But we came home. You know, they celebrate, for the old-timers, they celebrate New Year's by Eastern time.
Yeah.
So we were there to count it out at 9 o'clock. So we got home, and the poor dog was nowhere to be found. I think he was upstairs under a bed because we're in one of those neighborhoods where people have the rocket launchers and they're setting off not just your backyard firecrackers, but the big stuff, you know, the M180s or whatever they are, and all the stuff that you see in the big fireworks shows. We got all that stuff, and it scares the daylights out of all the dogs in the neighborhood. I hate it.
Yeah, I feel bad for the animals. Puppy shots I gave him. And I do it on 4th of July and for New Year's where I've got that puppy marijuana. So I slip that to him, and it helps him relax because he grips. They don't know what's going on.
No.
And they hear things that we don't hear, so they just assume the end of the world is near.
Yeah.
And they start to grip.
Yeah, and it's like, look, I give them the fireworks on the 4th of July. New Year's Eve, you don't need fireworks. Come on. What are we doing here?
You're not down with the New Year's Eve fireworks?
No, and no, I'm not, actually. I don't need them. And I don't, I guess I'm getting old. I don't go to fireworks shows anymore either. You see one, you've seen them all. I saw them growing up. We lived in Southeast Portland. Oaks Park had a fireworks show every 4th of July. We'd see it. Okay, fireworks, great, good. Are you done? And after a while, it's like, what is there? I'm not impressed anymore. I don't get it.
Well, I failed on my mission. My goal was to get me and my boy Steve a picture with Tony the Tiger, but we couldn't quite track him down at the Sun Bowl, and I was really upset about that.
Man.
That's the only thing we didn't accomplish, but it was great because the tickets that I had purchased for $60 sold for remarkably more the day before the game.
You're not going to reveal the cost?
I don't need to. I can just tell you that it worked out handsomely for both of us. And so we had the press passes. So we flew in. It was perfect. We got up early on the 29th. We went to the airport there in Vegas. We flew out. We had to catch a connecting flight in Phoenix. Got in just after 9 o'clock into El Paso. Jumped in the Uber. Took us straight up to the Starbucks to where we could get our credentials. And then we walked right across the street over to the stadium. We're set up in the press box, which was a genius move because although it was sunny and nice, it did cool a little bit as the game went along. So we were set up perfectly. They had a great spread and food. And then what's really nice, and I love doing this, but for people that aren't used to having access, to be able to get my boy Steve to go down on the field in the fourth quarter where we're down there watching the action and then be out there on the field when the players and everything are celebrating, it was pretty awesome. So we had a great time. The game obviously was a dud because you realize there's a big difference between Notre Dame and Oregon State when you start to get to second and third string players, and you realize the depth and the difference between two programs like that. So it was pretty obvious that one team was more talented than the other. But the one thing we noticed is that when we're on the field and you're seeing the families and the players, we always laugh at these ball games like, what's the point, right? Well, I could tell by the coaches and the players for Notre Dame, they were enjoying themselves. And so it's a good reminder to me that even though I may not see the significance in a certain game, for the players, it matters to have a bowl game, to get a chance to compete. And for some of the younger guys that are getting a chance to get their first start, to get some action, it means a big deal to them. So we had a great time, flew out, so it was a day trip. So we started in Vegas, went to Phoenix, on to El Paso, back to Vegas, all in one day. And then on our flight back to Vegas, Michael Shacker, who was down there with the Beavers Radio Network, was on our flight back to Vegas because he had to catch the connecting flight back to Portland. And I told you about my issue on planes and having people sit in my row that I don't want sitting in my row. So Steve was on the window. I was at the aisle. And we had a boarding group before Shacker. So when he got on, we're like, bro, come here. So he sat down in between us. So we had a perfect row of people we knew and people who weren't spilling into our areas, which was perfect. And I got to give Shacker credit. He's one of the best flying partners you could imagine because he understands his window and his seat, and he does not move outside of that. He's perfect. So it worked out.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Just along those lines, our pal Softy had a tweet today. It was a picture. Oh, God. You'll love it. Obviously, he was on a plane, and in his row, a woman was seating, probably seat A. He was probably in seat C. So in between them was the B seat. And apparently, she had her shoes off, and she had her feet on her husband's lap, and they came across his lap over, like, almost in front of him. Not quite, but close enough to make you very, very uncomfortable.
Were they bare feet?
Yeah, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, bare feet. Not even socks on. Just take your shoes off and stick your bare feet in somebody's lap, basically.
The stuff that people do on planes and the way they dress and look in airports, it's like, look, you're not going to bed. This is not your bedroom.
You see pajamas now.
Mix in a shower, put on some deodorant, and don't ever expose your bare feet, losers.
Last time we flew, we saw two women in their pajamas getting on the plane.
What are we doing here?
I don't know. What is this?
They're losers. If you do that, you are a loser. No offense, of course.
Certified loser. Absolutely.
I should not have to look at your bare feet. I don't feel like that's asking too much.
Oh, gosh. No way I want to look at your feet. And I don't want to smell them, and they're close enough that he probably did.
I feel bad for Softy. Not too often I can say that, but I feel bad for the guy.
Well, you can't feel bad about it. He had a great weekend.
All right, we have 2 pairs of tickets to give away for the Blazers and Suns. We'll do our first pair coming up at 3:45. We'll talk with Joe DeLeon, college football and NFL expert, coming up at 5:20. When we come back, we'll dive into what we saw with Washington and Texas, a thrilling football game, and Michael Penix continuing to impress. We keep doubting Washington, and all they do is keep getting wins. 14-0. 14-0. That's pretty good, Godfather.
Yeah, for a team that's going to be an underdog again next week.
The same team that was a 10-point dog to Oregon. Are you kidding me?
How good were the Ducks that they were 10-point favorites over Washington?
Oh, my goodness. All right. You got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. Happy New Year.
It's Rip City Drive on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Godfather, I came across a stat today that's remarkable. Caleb Williams this year for USC sacked more than Michael Penix has in his entire career.
You're going all the way back to those Indiana stats too, or just the Washington?
His entire career.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so the one advantage that Washington has, and it really helps his offensive lineman out a great deal, is that he just gets rid of the football. He does not hold on to it, and he's got a unique way of being able to navigate the pocket. And also, when he's not ready to get rid of the football, he's got different arm angles and things he can do to get rid of the football because he's not a mobile quarterback, but in the pocket with his feet, he's so good, but accurate. And I just continue to be blown away at how good he really is. And it goes beyond the accuracy. Delivering the football on time and on target is the most important skill you need when you go to the NFL. But I do think that there's something to be said about a guy who, whether like Jalen Hurts or some of these other guys that we see, doesn't really show a lot of emotion, just calm. Yeah. And I think that has an impact on your teammates, especially some of the younger guys that you're depending on to make plays to get you to where you want to be. And I also love the fact that Penix had the players-only meeting before that game against Texas yesterday, just to let everyone know, hey, this is a big moment. We got to take advantage of it because we never know when you're going to have a shot like this ever again. So we got to do it right now. So he is the unquestioned leader of that team and a great extension of Kalen DeBoer and his staff for what they want to do. But that guy's awesome. Michael Penix is a stud. And don't you think that he would have won the Heisman if he wasn't playing up in the Northwest?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just going through the internet, reading the reactions of writers, media people, and his fans to seeing Penix. And I know from reading their reaction, they hadn't really seen him before. They couldn't have, or they would have known what we've known for a long time. Those long balls, he has put it in the bucket all season long. He is so good throwing the long ball and making it come down right in somebody's full-speed basket. It's amazing how good he is with that. And then, like you said, in the pocket, he slides, he moves subtly. It's like Tom Brady used to. He wasn't a runner or anything, but he knew how to feel it and to find himself room to get the pass off. And I mean, this kid's really good. He should have won the Heisman. There's no question if he'd have played in the Southeast Conference or the Big Ten like he used to, he would have won the Heisman. It's a shame, really. People just had no idea how talented he is. Great arm, too. Man, when he wants to, he throws lasers. Gosh, so that one touchdown he threw where the DBs were kind of crossing in front of the receivers, that window was very small, and he zipped it in right through the window.
Well, I think quarterbacks, and we saw this with Penix and yours last night, in different situations, understanding what type of pitch you got to throw, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a little bit of touch on it. Sometimes you got to put some mustard on it. And Penix has got a great feel for that. Yours, a great example at the end of the game.
Yes.
Mitchell was open on that play, but he threw the wrong type of ball, which led him out of bounds and allowed Washington to secure the victory. And that's accuracy and delivering the football on time and on target. Yours missed out on a golden opportunity after the gift they were given to capitalize, and he couldn't do it because he threw the wrong pass in the wrong moment. The play was there, but he threw the wrong ball.
Yeah, he needed to zip that one, to throw it hard right at the back shoulder. It's a catch. I don't think the defender could have done anything about it. But instead, he looped it. He threw kind of a lollipop out there, like a traditional fade that you would throw. And that just wasn't going to work. And the DB, to be fair, did a nice job of getting up over the top and batting it away. But even if he'd have caught it, I think, Chad, he would have been out of bounds anyway, right?
Well,
it looked like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bad throw. He let him out of bounds. Washington has really helped me change the way I look at college football now because we continue to doubt them.
Yeah.
Now, I thought they were going to beat Texas. As soon as I saw the matchup, I was like, well, Texas can't defend the pass, and Washington is terrific at being able to throw the deep ball. I had no doubt that Washington was going to win that game. But everyone has been doubting them throughout the year. Why is that? I mean, all they do is win football games. In college football, it drives me crazy. It's like, well, they're only winning games. They haven't dominated their competition. Look, I've seen enough bad teams lose games that are close all the time.
Yeah.
And Washington, in close game after close game, continues to make the right decision, the right play, and they execute and come up with the big play when they have to. There's got to be something about teams that just know how to win and have the right players to be able to do that. And it starts with that coaching staff. Kalen DeBoer is absolutely one of the best game day X's and O coaches in all of college football. He's just as good as Jim Harbaugh. No one knows it, but that's how good he is. And the combination between him and Grubb, we've seen it throughout their time at Washington together.
It goes all the way back, too, right?
They've been together for a long time. Kalen DeBoer is a terrific coach. This team is really special, and they're experienced. They've got a lot of veterans on the squad. All I know is that Washington is absolutely one of the best teams in the country, and they haven't lost a game since last October. I was at that game down at Arizona State. They haven't lost since then. They just keep winning games, and they keep beating really good teams on the biggest stages. They find ways to get it done, but it starts with the quarterback. Michael Penix, look, I don't know what type of pro he's going to be, but his ability is not going to be the question when it comes to the draft. It's going to be his medicals and the past injuries he's had with his legs. Outside of that, there are teams out there that will see him and think, you know what? He knows how to maneuver the pocket. He delivers the football on time and on target, and he's got great leadership skills as a quarterback. We can take a chance on that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the football skills are there, but the medicals will be the big concern with him.
Both knees, right, Chad?
Yes. Yep.
ACL?
I think they're ACLs.
Yeah.
The problem, or the good news is by him transferring, is that he's been able to put together back-to-back years where he's been healthy and available. And that's going to be good for him moving forward.
And they've been holding their breath this season because we know now that he went through a span in the middle of the year where he wasn't right. He had I think it was ribs, everybody said, right?
We think it was ribs.
Yeah.
They kept that on the down low. I think that's part of the reason why they struggled in a number of games after the first win over Oregon, probably because their quarterback wasn't right. Now, the advantage for them is that as the season went along, he was able to get himself in a position where he could play at a high level come Pac-12 title game time. But that whole facade that fool's gold that Oregon was a 10-point favorite over them in the Pac-12 title game is laughable now if you look back with the way Washington has played. But I've just been impressed with the coaching, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, and the play of Penix and that receiving core, which is really nice. Very impressive. And that game yesterday, aside from the end, that was a game that Washington controlled from start until finish.
Yes.
They had a couple of special teams mistakes that allowed Texas to remain in the game, but that was a game that Washington was in control of.
Well, the injury when they were running the clock down killed them.
That is the dumbest rule I've ever seen in my life. Texas has no timeouts. Washington plays the situation perfectly. They recover the onside kick. They force Texas to use their timeouts, and they're going to run the football and then burn the clock all the way down to the end. And by the time they punt it, Texas would have had less than 10 seconds on the clock to have one last gasp. No chance. But the running back goes down, injury timeout, and instead of winding the clock once they get everyone back on the field, the clock just stops, giving Texas life. And then you add into that another special teams mistake with the catch interference on Washington.
15-yard penalty.
And then all of a sudden, Texas is in business. I can't believe that they did not run the clock, and that's a rule in college football. But they should have never been in a position to have that opportunity. Unbelievable to me. Yeah. Pick up the teammate. Whatever it takes to get him off the field, but don't let him call timeout.
Grab him by the ankles and pull him off, right?
Just throw him over your shoulder and get his ass off the field. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. One thing that we don't talk about enough sometimes, I think, is they were underdogs in games. They trailed in games. In the end, you don't want to trail in the second half, but if you do and you overcome it and you win, that's a very good thing. Because those guys, they're not deterred at all when they get down or behind or whatever happens. I think what I heard yesterday when Michigan got behind, that was the first time all season they'd been behind.
Yeah.
So you have to win. Then you get a couple special teams mistakes. Man, that could snowball on you in a hurry.
Yeah. And, Washington, I'm just done doubting them. I just know that they're a really good football team, and that coaching staff will have them ready to go Monday against Michigan.
Burkhart and I were talking about this game Thursday or Friday. And my conclusion was, after what we've seen from Washington this season, I can't bet against them. We've seen them. Now, all these guys that are making the line and are in the East, I'm a believer. I think they have it, and I would pick them to win the championship. I really do think so, Chad. I think they are going to win somehow, some way, if they can keep their quarterback upright. I think they'll pull it out.
Well, it was Joe Klatt that I heard today. He made a very good point. Look, Michigan's a different animal than Texas. Their play at the line of scrimmage, we saw it against Alabama yesterday, it was elite.
Yeah.
Their secondary is elite. They're a physical football team, and they're going to present a lot of different problems to Washington. But Klatt made a good point that a couple of years ago, before Harbaugh, when he was on the verge of getting let go because he couldn't beat Ohio State, they had to rethink about how they built their team. And so what he did is he reached out to his brother, and his brother offered up a couple of his assistants to help him out. So he chose one, and then he installed the Raven defense. And really what they tried to do was get run-stuffing defensive tackles, be really strong on the edge, and then they have these hybrid guys that are playing linebacker and safety. So they can do a lot of different things, give you a lot of different looks, and put pressure on the quarterback. So they've changed the way that they've played. But the reason why they did all of this was to put themselves in a position to beat Ohio State, who had C.J. Stroud, Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, all the big receivers, right? That Ohio State team was constructed a lot like this Washington team. So Michigan is as well prepared as anybody in the country to deal with the playmakers and the type of quarterback play that Washington has. So I'm very anxious to see how that matchup works. Plus, you know, Michigan will be able to run the football and have success in that department. So, but Michigan will have issues getting pressure on Penix because he gets rid of the football so quick.
Yeah.
So the matchup, I think, is terrific. Two great teams going head-to-head with two great coaches and two great quarterbacks. It's really everything you want in a national championship game.
Yeah, and I just don't think Michigan has seen the likes of Penix this season. They haven't seen a quarterback like that.
That's true. But Washington hasn't seen the likes of that Michigan defense either. They haven't seen it.
No.
They haven't played anyone close to that with the talent level and the scheme and the way they play.
We're going to see what that Washington offensive line is all about. They won the award this year. They got the award, best offensive line in the country.
Yes.
If they're going to need it in this game.
And I think the reason why, no disrespect to their offensive line, which has done a good job, but Penix is responsible for that award as much as they are because he gets rid of the football. He's the perfect guy to block for. He doesn't scramble. He stays in the pocket, and he gets rid of the football on time. Most quarterbacks, like Jalen Milroe, don't get rid of the football on time. They don't stay in the pocket, and they're hard to block for.
And they can't throw anyway.
So Penix is the perfect guy to block for. I love this matchup, and the question is, do they have the material, enough material to be able to deal with? Because Michigan, I mean, look, say what you want, but how often do you see Alabama get pushed around on the at the line of scrimmage? And Michigan controlled the line of scrimmage against Alabama yesterday from start until finish. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. Both teams are unique in the way they're set up. So Michigan's going to see receivers and a quarterback that they haven't seen all year, and Washington's going to see line of scrimmage play, linebackers, edge players that they haven't seen all year. So I can't wait to see it go down. It's going to be awesome. And both coaches are superb. Jim Harbaugh's a genius, and I think Kalen DeBoer's a genius. Both guys are super sharp.
It's a pretty good clash in styles, too, I think, where Harbaugh's a little bit of a throwback, run the football, be a little bit conservative, play great defense, hold the score down a little bit. You're not going to get in any kind of big, high-scoring game with anybody. And then on the other side, this is a lot of new age stuff. All that motion they have, the pre-snap stuff they do, all those things where you'll see three guys switch from one side of the line of scrimmage to the other before the snap, then another guy goes in motion. All that stuff designed to help your passing game out, to help the quarterback read the coverage. They do all that stuff. So to me, it's a really nice contrast in styles of the two teams.
Yes. And in my experience, in my lifetime, the teams that normally win championship games are the ones who run the football, play great defense. I want to see if Washington can respond to that. Harbaugh, just by the way he coaches and the way his teams play, he's probably terrific at foreplay because he doesn't go for the big home run right away. He wants to ease himself into the game. I'm okay with 3 yards in a cloud of dust. let's play field position and let's beat teams physically. He is very methodical in his approach. He probably got off in that game against Alabama more than any other game he's coached because they won the game playing his style of football. Physical, patience, being tough, right, against Alabama. Like, he loved that. Like, his personality was playing out on the field against Alabama. That had to be very satisfying to Jim Harbaugh.
How do you feel about the idea that he's never won the big one?
Well, I don't really think that too much about it. Like, I always look back to the scenario, like Lamar Jackson. He hasn't won a big moment in the playoffs. I understand that. But I also know the team he's got this year is the best team he's ever been a part of. Mm-hmm. So I just believe that Jim Harbaugh I believe he's a genius. I think he's one of the best football coaches I've ever seen. And I think that he's good enough to get over in the big spot. I do. Just like I believe Lamar Jackson is good enough to figure out how to win a playoff game at home. I think he can do that. I just think it's a matter of situation, right? Like in the other spots, and the other times he played in the playoff, like the loss to TCU was bad because his team was not prepared and they got blitzed from the start. The other game they lost in the playoff was to Georgia.
Yeah.
They weren't as good. Yeah. In the Super Bowl that they lost, they were right there in the end.
Until the lights went out.
And the Ravens won the football game, but they were right there and had their chances. So I think Jim Harbaugh is going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be worried. Obviously, he wants to win because he hates that being on his record, but his team will be prepared and they will play well. For Washington to win the championship, they're going to have to continue to play sound football. You can't make the big mistake. I'll tell you one thing. Both teams better go back and go back to the drawing board on special teams. You can't have the special team gaffes and the mistakes. I was stunned to see Michigan's special teams so pathetic in that game against Alabama yesterday. Yeah. That's a Harbaugh coach team, and their special teams was a complete wreck.
Yeah.
That can cost you a game. It almost cost them.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're not normally that way from what everyone says. They've had good special teams, and they should. But, man, they made some really bad mistakes.
Yeah.
Especially at the end of the game.
And it's usually those type of mistakes
like
that cost you in championship play.
Yeah.
A poor special teams play, a missed kick, a blocked punt, some type of dumb special teams mistake that can cost you a championship game. Because I have a feeling this game is going to be close right up until the end of the fourth quarter. That's the way the game feels. It'll be tight. Probably not as high scoring as Texas and Washington, but I think there'll be more points put on the board than what we saw Bama Michigan yesterday. What a great game. Michael Penix is a stud. That guy's a stud, Godfather. Gosh.
He's fun to watch for me. I really like watching him because he doesn't make any bad throws. You see all these guys that occasionally make a bad throw. You don't see that from him. He's usually in the neighborhood. It's usually right around where it needs to be. Well, he's got great receivers.
He had the overthrow on the tight end who was coming open.
Yeah.
That surprised me. I'm like, I can't. When he misses a throw, I'm stunned because he normally doesn't miss.
I think he read it that the guy was going to sit, instead of continuing on across, and I think that's where it happened because he threw behind him a little bit.
No, I'm talking about the play that he overthrew the tight end when he was in the clear for the touchdown.
Oh, okay.
He just didn't put enough air underneath it.
Yeah.
And he kind of had that look like, I missed that one. But that's okay. He's a terrific quarterback. And, J.J. McCarthy, give him credit. He made some big throws late in that game against Alabama, too.
Yeah, he did.
Michigan doesn't look to air it out that much. I mean, they want to run the football and be physical. But McCarthy, when he had to, made a couple of big throws. Big plays.
Their scheme was really good in opening up. I mean, they, in big plays, had two guys in the flat, just wide open. Because they'd cleared it out with the scheme and with their motion and all the things they did. That's really good coaching stuff there.
That 4th down and 2 play was critical. I was surprised that Harbaugh went for it in that spot. I thought he would punt it with over 3 minutes on the clock and 3 timeouts, but he elected to go for it, and they got the big play. Even with the block in the back, it still put him at midfield, and they were able to go down and get the score.
That's confidence in your quarterback and in the play you're going to call. In your back pocket, we got this play that we can make work.
Now, I'm a big Saban fan. I don't think he's getting enough credit for the work he did this year. To get that team into the playoff with only one loss and Jalen Milroe as your quarterback, it was an impressive job by Saban. And to get his team back in that game at halftime to make some adjustments, that Alabama defense tightened up, and they were in a position to win that game.
He's a great coach, and I thought he did a great job all year with that team that wasn't good enough to get as far as it got. He second half of that game, he was playing with one hand behind his back because they didn't want his quarterback throwing the ball any further than about 5 yards. They didn't trust him.
All right, when we come back on the Rip City Drive, we have a pair of tickets for the Blazers and Suns that we will give away. Your chance to win is next. And we'll talk about Harbaugh and his future. Where is he going to go? Where should he go? And what type of game is he going to play between Michigan and the NFL? We'll get to that next.
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, we have Trailblazer tickets to give away here in just a moment. Let's go out to the phones real quick, Godfather. My man Evan, who is an Oklahoma brother, is out there, big Cowboy fan. Hey, congrats, Evan, to the successful end of your Cowboy season. My dad was very happy with the win over Texas A&M.
Oh, yeah, man. Anytime Texas lose, I'm happy, especially last night with actual Texas losing. That's always a win in my book.
Oh, me too. And I told my dad, I said, look, I know they're Big 12, but you cannot pull for Texas under any circumstances, and he agreed and pulled for Washington.
Hey, I love it. So, hey, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm getting eaten alive on the internet. Literally, there's like probably 300 people that are telling me I'm dumb and wrong. So I want to get your opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about the Jamal Adams situation with the tweet and the reporter Kill Tony?
Yes.
I don't think Jamal Adams did anything wrong. I think the way he went to the level and going after the wife, it was extreme, but to an NFL player that get these comments all day long, you get tired of it. So, if you blow up once, then people stop messing with you, right? Like, if people are bullying you and you punch the bully in the face in the bus, guess who's going to not bully you anymore? The people.
Well, I think the bigger issue with Jamal Adams is more the fact that he has not done much of anything in a Seahawks uniform ever since they went out to make the move to get him. And I think if he were playing good football, no one would raise an eyebrow.
Really? Because what I'm getting from just the comments I've heard is that it was way over the top, that he shouldn't have responded, or people are like, he's a football player, he gets paid millions, and I'm like, your monetary value doesn't disregard you as a human, though, right? Like, I don't care if you make $1 billion. If you're not doing anything wrong, like, he wasn't doing anything wrong, he just had a bad play. But people come after him, and it's like, no, this is a human being that just goes to work like you and I do.
Well, that's a good point. Godfather, where do you draw the line for athletes when it comes to a response to criticism or social media? Like, how much of it should they let just roll off their shoulders and move on?
Well, I think if you can, Chad, it's best to let it all roll off your shoulders and not get involved with it on social media. You know that yourself, and I know that from the criticism we get. Usually if you engage people, it doesn't turn out well. I do it sometimes just for the fun of it. But for athletes, I think you have to expect it because people are going to get on your case for things you do on the field, on the court, on the whatever. But they're not always going to be the brightest people getting on you. So people are going to give you a bad time about all sorts of things. And very often they're wrong, but there's no point in trying to straighten them out. You're just giving them attention. And sometimes you're engaging with somebody who has 10 followers, and they're just using you to build up their followers. So I would say overall, just let it go most of the time.
All right, there's a report that has been out now that apparently the L.A. Chargers are frustrated with this perception that they're a cheap organization.
Sure they are. That's
working and functioning in Los Angeles. And according to the report, they definitely have interest in Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Now, they should, because Jim Harbaugh would be the perfect hire for them to come in and restore the franchise. And my guess would be inside of 2 years, he would have Justin Herbert in a Super Bowl. It would be that easy for him to work with a quarterback like that. And then you would get the same type of team you see at Michigan, which is the same type of team you saw at San Francisco or with Stanford. A tough-minded football team that runs the football, is physical on defense, and with great quarterback play, he would win. He wins everywhere he goes. He's done it at Michigan. He did it at San Francisco. He did it at Stanford. He did it at San Diego. He's the right call. Now, it's big. It's one thing to say that you're not going to be cheap and you're interested in a guy like Jim Harbaugh. But like right now, Sean Payton's making $18 million a year to coach the Broncos, right?
Yeah.
I can guarantee you the price tag to get Jim Harbaugh is going to be, let's just say, $20 million a year.
They're not going that high, are they?
It would be the first time they've gone that type of price tag to get a coach. And not only do you have to pay him that type of money, but you have to do it with the understanding that he's going to want control. He's going to want power. So I want the Chargers to hire Harbaugh because he would be the perfect hire for them. And he would get a chance to work with Herbert. And finally, Herbert, after a string of dum-dums, would have a viable head coach to get him on the right track. So it's absolutely the right thing. But I'll believe it when I see it. Because Harbaugh is going to come in and he'll dictate in the interview what he's looking for. And my guess is he'll turn off an organization like that because he'll come in and say, look, do you want me or not? Here's the price. Here's what I'm going to do. You know my track record. It's that simple. They should do it, but I don't think they're going to do it because they're a pathetic franchise. That's all. They're cheap. They don't want to spend big.
You know, the day that they decided to move from San Diego to Los Angeles, that should have flipped a switch in their mind saying, okay, we're kind of in the big leagues now, big league town. It's not sleepy San Diego anymore where people just are going to accept whatever we do. If we're going to go and play the big boys game,
Yeah.
you better start spending some money because they get no attention now in LA at all, right? I mean, they're not even a home team when they play there. Yeah, I was listening on the radio to one of their games the last time they were at home, and the visiting team got louder reactions. You hear it better on the radio than you do on TV. Louder reactions than the Chargers did.
Yeah. In both of their previous home games, Buffalo, which I'm sure is the one you were talking about,
Buffalo's the one.
and Denver, it was like, and this goes for any team that shows up in LA. It's like a home game for the visiting team.
Yeah.
They take over the stadium. If they want to compete in that market, and they'll never be able to compete like the Lakers or the Dodgers or the Rams.
Or even the Trojans.
Or the Trojans. But if you want to be taken seriously, make the right hire. Get Jim Harbaugh. I don't care what the price tag is. He's going to pay you back by winning.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to get the return on investment. He's going to win and win big. And if I were Justin Herbert and his representation, you don't have to make a big fuss over it, but I would communicate, hey, you got to get this right. Herbert needs to use some of his power as a big-time quarterback to let it be known that, you know what, go out and get me a legitimate head coach for crying out loud.
Well, at least Harbaugh would protect him. I think the first thing that would happen is we got to get offensive linemen. We're not going to let this guy get clubbed every time he tries to throw the ball. They'd protect him better. Now, that team does need – they need an overhaul a little bit. They have good players. A lot of them are old. A lot of them are coming up on contract years. I think it'll take a little while personnel-wise to get them straightened out, but I have no doubt he's the guy who will be able to do that the quickest and the most effectively.
And Harbaugh is in a great spot because he can use the NFL. Like if he wants to return to Michigan, he can use the NFL to drive up the price on the Wolverines.
Yeah.
And make sure he gets every dime times 20 with what he had to get back a couple of years ago when he took the contract reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly what he wants. I think he does desire the NFL, but he can use it to his advantage.
Well, don't you think, especially if he wins next week, if they're the champs, then you say, okay, I did what I came here to do. My alma mater got a championship. Now I can go back and try to get that Super Bowl that I've always wanted.
Yeah. My guess is for a guy like Harbaugh, because he's crazy, that the fact that he lost the Super Bowl to his brother's not sitting well in his stomach.
Yeah.
All right. We'll give Trailblazer tickets away coming up next. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Your chance to win tickets for the Blazers and Suns is next on the Rip City Drive.
what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, what's going on? It's now 4 o'clock. Chad here, my friends. Hope you're enjoying your 2024 national title game's been set. Washington will take on Michigan Monday night in Houston. The Wolverines are a 4.5-point favorite. The game will be played at NRG Stadium. Kickoff at 4:30 on ESPN. From the NFL, Sean McVay says he'll definitely coach the Rams next year. The Jets have cut Dalvin Cook. He's free to sign with a contender. And Bill Belichick says he's focused on the Jets and not his coaching future. The Trailblazers dropped game one of their 7-game road trip last night in Phoenix. Scoot led the team with 17 points. Next up, the Mavericks down in Dallas tomorrow. Tip-off at 5:30. Game day will start at 3. It's all here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. We have 2 pairs of tickets to give away for the Suns and Blazers today. We're doing 1 pair coming up next on the Rip City Drive.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
My daughter's like, look, don't let anyone videotape you doing anything you don't want to be videotaped for.
No kidding.
Because they're going to put it out on the internet, and once it gets out there, it's there forever. Just remember that, honey.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, it scares the daylights out of me. The thoughts of what guys will try to trick girls into doing, and they've got cameras. It's like, come on now. Be smart. Be smart. And if they say they love you, they don't really mean that they love you. All right. We have tickets right now for the Trailblazers and Suns. We have 2 pairs to give away. We'll do 1 pair right now. Let's go with caller 5. We'll make it easy on Shacker. Caller 5 right now, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Caller 5 will get a pair of tickets for the Trailblazers and Suns coming up at Moda Center. Call now, courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers and 620 Rip City Radio. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday is presented by Lazy Boy. Call now for your tickets, and we'll have another pair that we'll give away coming up at 5 o'clock. 503-248-0620. Caller 5 will get a pair of tickets for the Trailblazers and Suns. And for all of your Trailblazer ticket needs, just head over to trailblazers.com. They have single-game tickets. They've got packages. I think your wife Nancy's got a package, and it includes Milwaukee.
Yes, it does. That's a big deal.
That's right. She wanted it, and this is how good the Trailblazers are. She called in and said, hey, my package doesn't include Dame coming back with Milwaukee, and they took care of her.
They did, yeah. That was very nice of them to handle that for her.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's customer service at its finest. So
that's a nice package, by the way, Chad. If you don't have money to see as many games as we can see, just cherry pick the good teams. Go watch the good teams play. You can't beat that. I mean, that's the way to go.
I agree. There's enough bad teams in the NBA. Why not pick and choose the good teams to go watch?
You can skip the bad teams.
I don't need Detroit in my life.
No.
Oh, how about them acting like they won a championship after they snapped their 28-game losing streak?
Yeah, I think you got to tell them before the game, guys, we're going to win one pretty soon. Let's at least act like we expected to win, you know?
Cade Cunningham was saying some crazy stuff after that game, like, oh, I'm just so happy to be a part of a team that doesn't quit. I'd make the argument you already quit on the season. You lost 28 in a row.
Well, the league won't let you quit. You have to keep playing the games. That's just kind of the way it is.
Oh, my goodness. What a disaster. Speaking of disasters, I wanted to get your take on what we saw with Dallas and Detroit. Yeah. A fantastic football game that was marred once again by an officiating gaffe at the end. And Well, I'll give you my thoughts, but the crew was led by Brad Allen, who's already been a part of another debacle in Kansas City earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But what was your takeaway from what you saw where the Lions, they were going for the win. They didn't want to get into overtime. They were going for the 2-point conversion. And so they decided to go with the old offensive lineman is eligible to get him the ball. And the play worked. The problem is communication issues with the officials. What was your takeaway?
Well, Detroit insists that the tackle, the left tackle, reported as eligible to the Whitecap, the referee, and then the referee somehow either misunderstood him, didn't hear him, whatever, but he announced that a different player was eligible, and consequently, even though they ran a great tackle-eligible play for the 2-point conversion, which would have changed the seeding in the conference playoffs, it was disallowed. They were penalized, and the play went for naught. And it's in my mind, too bad, because I love to see creative kind of plays run in those kinds of situations. I love the play. I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. It was fun to see that happen in Dallas in front of all the Cowboy loyalists. But, they tried to get away with something, and they didn't get away with it, basically.
It was a great play.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of guts to go for the win there, so it was fun to see how that played out. I just saw it very simply as a situation where the Lions, knowing that they were going to go tackle eligible, they sent multiple guys at the official all at once because they were trying to trick the Cowboys
Exactly.
with confusion, sleight of hand. By sending multiple guys out, they wanted 68 Decker to be the eligible player, but the official, because there were multiple Lions coming at him at once, in a pressure situation, he was confused and announced number 70.
Mm-hmm.
Why the Lions didn't hear that, which was announced over the entire stadium that 70 was eligible and not 68, why they didn't go up to the ref and say, no, you got it wrong, and correct that situation is beyond my understanding. I understand why they were trying to get cute because they wanted to try and confuse the Cowboys, but I think sometimes you can get too cute.
Yeah.
And it unfolded that way. The officials definitely made a mistake. I mean, you got to make sure that you're on point as an official and you understand exactly what they're trying to do, especially if you got multiple guys coming at you. You might want to ask them now, who's reporting as eligible? Why do I see so many of you guys?
Right. And especially since apparently the officials were told before the game they were going to run that. Here's what we're going to do. Supposedly Campbell even drew the play up for them, either on a board or on a piece of paper. He showed them exactly what they were going to do. And so they had to be alerted to that possibility. But still, there's a lack of communication that falls on not just the referee, but on the players and the coach of that team that's trying to get away with something.
Yeah. Now, I take the stance that while it was a great play, I don't believe that number 68 would have been so open if he was the guy announced as the eligible receiver. Because once he's not announced and it's announced as 70, the Cowboys are not going to worry about 68 because he's not a part of the play. He didn't announce as eligible. So I don't think I look at that play and I'm like, I would like to have seen it if the proper player was announced, how the Cowboys would have dealt with it. But they're not worried about 68 once 70 is announced as eligible. And Brad Allen clearly went over to the defense after he was hammered by multiple Lions to let them know that 70 was the eligible receiver.
Yeah.
Which is dumb anyways because 70 was covered, so he couldn't have been eligible.
Right. Yeah.
He reports as eligible, and then he's covered at the line of scrimmage, which means he's ineligible. What a mess. So I blame the officials, and I blame the Lions for trying to get cute. And then what took place after that, Dan Campbell, he's crazy. I love Dan Campbell. He's great for the game, and I think he's a good coach. But
He crazy.
He lined up. He acted like a child who was throwing a fit after he got screwed by the officials on the penalty. They lined up to go for it 5 yards back. You're 7 yards out. What are you doing? Just kick the extra point and get to overtime, you moron.
Yeah.
He lines up and then is gifted a penalty because Micah Parsons is offsides, and they go for it again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you run out of your gadget plays. It's really hard to score from that position. Just kick the extra point. The reason why I hate the decision-making there from Campbell is, one, I think he was doing it out of frustration.
Yeah.
But two, at that point in the game, the Lions were playing better football. They were playing better football. You get to overtime and give yourself a chance to win.
He reminded me a lot of, what's a golf movie? Was it Tin Cup or which one of those where the pro said, I can get there from here? And he kept hitting the ball and hitting the ball. He's up to like 16 strokes. And no, I can make, and he just wouldn't give up on it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's basically out of the tournament because he's taken so many strokes on that hole, but he just wouldn't admit that he couldn't do it. You know what would have been a great play, though? On the third attempt, send 68 back out and report him as eligible, and then don't throw it to him, throw it to somebody else.
Yeah.
I would have liked that.
I think you're asking for a little bit too much from the Lions coaching staff there to be that creative.
Well, by then, he was a nutcase. He was gonzo. I mean, you could just see him on this. He was just steaming.
Yeah. It was really dumb. Really dumb. But he was crazy to go for it. Kick the extra point, get into overtime. Your team's playing good football right now. Give them a chance to win.
I don't think he wanted to go to overtime. It just looked that way to me.
I understand that. But after you don't get it and you get the penalty called on you, he lines up 7 yards out to go for it. And he wasn't just trying to draw him off sides. He got lucky. He was going to go for it. Dumb. That's not good coaching. Sometimes you can be overly aggressive. I think that's a situation where you're being overly aggressive.
It doesn't bode well for them in the postseason.
No, because now they're not going to be the number 2 seed. The reason why that positioning is critical is because you get more home games. And Detroit clearly is a better team at home because they're playing indoors on the dome where their speed is a factor.
But not only that, they now have a certifiable crazy coach who's probably going to make a similar mistake in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy is a dum-dum too.
Speaking of certifiable crazy coaches.
What are you doing throwing the football deep down the sideline out of bounds when you just need to run the football and force those idiots to take a timeout and then give them very few seconds on the clock?
Yeah.
But because of that play, you gave them a timeout essentially, and the Detroit had plenty of time to get down the field and score a touchdown. Yeah. That is reprehensible decision-making by the coach. Again, getting too cute. Just run the ball. Force them to burn the timeout, and then run more time off the clock.
Why is that so easy for everybody in the country to see in their living room, but the guy on the sideline with the headset can't figure that out?
I don't understand. I think these coaches, they have these plays, they get these situations, and they're like, man, this is going to work. And they're just determined to call the play, even though the smart thing to do is to run the ball and make them burn a timeout and use time. Take time off the clock. Don't give them a free timeout. The problem is, come playoff time, Dan Campbell is going to face a good coach like Kyle Shanahan or someone of that nature, and he's going to get out coached because his emotions are going to get the best of him. You got to be smart in those situations.
Yeah.
And I love Campbell, but hopefully he'll learn from that as, hey, I got to keep a cooler head here, right? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, my dad used to say discretion is the better part of valor. In other words, have some discretion here.
Have some discretion.
Yeah, know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Now, the crazy part to me with the NFL and the NBA is that the officiating continues to become a major distraction because of the poor officiating.
Yeah.
But they don't go through great lengths to solve it. We continue to have big spots, big moments where the officials are too big of a story in key moments, and you don't want that.
All they do is give you replay, which amplifies how many mistakes they made.
Yes. And then you get the officials coming on all the talk shows defending their brethren.
Oh, yeah. Every broadcast is some referee apologist. Well, yeah, I think they had a point there. I think that was probably a good call. I would have called it that way. Yeah, right.
This right here is Dan Campbell's theme song. This is his mission statement. Mm-hmm. He's the gambler. He lined up from the 7 after the penalty. Screw it, we're going to go get it.
He should have folded him.
I've done things when I'm mad. It doesn't usually work out very well.
Yeah.
Come on, Dan.
Well, when you're gambling, it's a real bad thing. Like you're trying to gamble your way back into prosperity.
Now gambling, Chad, as an NFL head coach, I'm going for it from the 7. I don't care about the penalty.
Yeah.
Screw it, man. We're going for the win. Screw the Cowboys. I want that 2 seed. Those windows are so tight in the NFL, too. And by the way, the final play, horrible throw by Goff, and you got to love it. A play that they run where they're throwing it short of the goal line in a 2-point situation. Even if he makes the catch, he probably gets tackled. That was a dumb play and a bad throw by Goff.
Yeah, very bad throw. Way short.
Just accept defeat. Take an L. The officials are idiots. We're going to go to overtime. He didn't do that, though.
Yeah, but by that time, he's probably sitting there thinking, Coach, come on, let's just kick it. Can we just kick it?
So if you're a Lions fan, you're happy that you're making the postseason, but you know your coach is crazy. And if you're a Cowboy fan, you're just waiting for the Mike McCarthy factor to enter in.
Yeah, because you've seen it enough times already.
Kyle Shanahan's looking around like, Philadelphia's a mess.
Yeah.
Campbell's crazy, and McCarthy's McCarthy. Like, we got this.
Yeah. See you at the Super Bowl.
Dum-dums. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the show. When we come back, we'll dive into Alabama and Michigan. And we have another pair of tickets for the Blazers and Suns to give away coming up at 5. But I tell you what, Godfather, I can't stop looking at the picture that Softy put out on the airplane. The lady next to the window has her foot over her husband's lap, bare feet, and it's like wedged in between her husband's seat and Softy's seat, and it's almost on top of his tray table. Unbelievable. I can't stop looking at it.
So rude.
Who does that?
It is totally rude. I mean, really, what are you thinking?
Yeah. But this kind of stuff happens on planes all the time. I would say something under these circumstances. I'd be like, what are we doing here? Hey, ma'am, can you get your bare foot away from my area, please?
Or maybe you just drop that tray table down right on her toe.
Or spill a cup of coffee or an ice-cold glass of water on her foot. My bad. But the thing is, I can guarantee you that if he said something to a lady like this, she would be incensed that he was taking issue with this. No one does this. That's disgusting.
Oh, her husband would probably want to punch you.
The husband probably knew that that was a bad play. My guess is he knew and was embarrassed for everyone that could see what was going on. But he didn't want to say anything to create an issue in the household. That would be my guess.
There's so much poor etiquette on airplanes, especially from people who don't fly very often. If you fly a lot, you kind of learn the unwritten rules of flying.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like dropping your seat back down in somebody's lap who's trying to work on their computer. You know, you got a laptop out and somebody drops that thing down.
Yeah, because that quarter inch is going to help you relax a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
Yeah. No, people are crazy. The pajamas kill me. Bare feet kill me. People with BO kill me. I can't take it. It's like you're in there with other people. I love the guy, too. I told you about him sitting next to me with the mask on. Irritated that he was sitting next to me. He was in the C group and got on last and chose me because I'm svelte. He had BO, and I was irritated at him the whole time. Like, dude, you're worried about me because you got your stupid mask on, but yet you stink. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I was thinking.
That's why he was wearing the mask.
Oh, what a clown. Jeez. All right, Alabama and Michigan. Another terrific football game yesterday. Overtime, and Michigan gets the win. We talked about Nick Saban. Let's talk about him a little bit more. What he did throughout the year from day one up until the playoff to get Jalen Milroe and that team in a position to be a part of the playoff is pretty impressive. And they beat Georgia in the SEC title game because he's got limitations at quarterback. Yeah. Jalen Milroe is a running quarterback, not a throwing quarterback. And we saw some of those limitations come out yesterday. But I thought Saban, to do what he did and to have his team in a position to win that game was impressive because they were getting dominated at the line of scrimmage.
Totally.
But their special teams were buttoned up. Their kicker is terrific, and they did a good job in the second half of running the football and playing good defense, and they had a chance to win the game.
Yeah, I was really upset this morning listening to talking heads on my television tell me how Harbaugh outcoached Saban in that game. Now, the game was tied at the end of the fourth quarter, so nobody dominated anybody, especially considering, I believe, Saban didn't have as much talent on the field as Harbaugh did. Harbaugh's loaded, okay? That team is probably physically better than what Alabama was throwing out there on the field. But somehow Saban got conservative in the second half. He protected his quarterback by not asking him to throw much. They got very conservative. They took advantage of whatever breaks they got, and they had a lead. It looked like they were going to win the game, really. I thought it was a terrific coaching job by one of the best in the business, a guy who's been at it for a long time, and I think is above anybody questioning whether he got out-coached or not. And I was just upset because I thought Bama did as well as they could have, given the fact their quarterback was subpar. Compare him to the other three quarterbacks in the semifinals. He's not even close. Not even close. Alabama hasn't had a guy like that in a long time.
Yeah. And Saban had him in a position to win the game. So, again, I have nothing but respect for Saban. Greatest college football coach ever.
Yes.
And he had his team in a position to win that game. I guess the part that was really surprising, I was only going with what the experts had told me in terms of draft experts, talking about this Michigan roster and the team that, Harbaugh had put together. Michigan suffered from a lot of what Oregon did, where they didn't really play anyone throughout the course of the year. Yeah. They played Penn State, which is a below-average football team, in my opinion, especially on offense. And they were able to beat Ohio State. But outside of that, they didn't really play anyone, and so they dominated their competition. So I wanted to see what they would do. I thought Alabama would win the game, and I was wrong. Michigan was able to get the job done. What impressed me the most with Michigan was that was a Jim Harbaugh special. They won the game in the way that the SEC normally wins games. They were the more physical team, and they dominated the line of scrimmage. They had constant pressure on Milroe. They made life tough in the first half on Alabama's run game, and they put constant pressure on them. And even with their offensive line giving time to J.J. McCarthy on third downs to where he could make some plays, that was impressive. I didn't think they could do it physically, and they physically won that football game. And they did it in a situation where their special teams were a hot mess. That was impressive. So Harbaugh, look, that team now, we always talk about teams taking on the personality of their coach. Alabama clearly is a team that's been, not Alabama, Michigan is clearly a team that's been molded in the image of their coach. He plays exactly the way he wants to.
Yeah, and I give him a little credit because you pointed it out earlier, Chad. 4th and 2 in your own territory, like in the 30s. I don't know, it's like 35 or 36, and they go for it. And, it was like a 35-yard play, as it turned out. Great pass play and well-schemed and well set up. And he's not afraid to push his chips in when he really believes he's got a shot. And that was a great play, and it really decided the game, I thought. I don't know about punting right there, even though you have the timeouts left. But that play probably won him the game.
Well, the reason why it was significant is that if you don't convert there on 4th and 2, I can guarantee you're going to lose the game because you're trailing by 7. You're already in field goal range. Alabama's kicker is ice.
Yeah.
So you would have lost the game had he not converted there. If you punt with Alabama's going to go conservative, they probably would have gotten the ball back, but they had a decision. They knew they were going to go for it, and they were able to convert and get the big play, setting up their game-tying score.
Let me ask you one question, though. Have you ever seen a team have so much trouble snapping the ball to their quarterback in shotgun?
Who, Milroe?
Yeah.
You're talking about Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could not get the ball back to him consistently. It was amazing. And he kept the same center in the game the whole time. He must not have anybody behind him, or he could have brought him up and had him under center because – The one series they had, he missed snap twice to the quarterback, and it cost him like 25 yards. It was craziness.
Yeah, that's why I like the adjustment at halftime where Alabama was like, wait a second. We're just going to go back to running the football. They got back to the basics. They ran the football. They played great defense and put themselves in a position to win the game. And that's what good coaching does. And, props to Harbaugh. No one thought that he could get over in that moment. There were a lot of people doubting him, and his team found a way to get it done. And McCarthy didn't have big numbers, but he made the big plays when he had to. And when you've got an experienced team with guys who have been in the program for a long period of time, you've got confidence in them, and they had multiple guys step up to make plays. That was impressive. They're fortunate to win the game because their special teams was a mess, and they better button that up before the game on Monday or they're going to have issues against Washington.
Yeah.
And Washington, too. Their special teams almost cost them a freaking game. It kills me. You got it. Special teams are such a critical part of the game where no one talks about it, but those type of mistakes can cost you championship opportunities. Hopefully they'll be better with both teams, special team-wise, in the game on Monday. You would hope.
So you think dropping a punt at your own 4-yard line late in the game could cost you a game?
He should have never fielded the punt.
I know.
Let it bounce into the end zone.
Of course. It was crazy.
But that's the problem with young kids. You think you know what they're going to do, but then you get them in that situation, and then those type of scenarios happen.
It's like my dad used to say, I tell you and tell you and tell you, but you still do it.
But this is why those coaches are partly crazy, because they're relying on these young guys to go out and execute the way it's been drawn up, and a lot of times it doesn't happen exactly the way you drew it up.
But how many times do you think that guy catching the punt has been told, look, when you're inside your own 10, let the ball go, or inside your own 5, whatever your rule is? He's been told that a dozen times. Probably told it even before he ran out on the field that last time. Still, he tries to catch the ball, and chaos ensues.
The other thing I love, too, are players fielding the kickoff and deciding to take it out and then not getting back to the 20. Oh, great. You just cost yourself about 7 to 8 yards in field position.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, if you take off, you better make sure you get it up to at least the 25 or you're costing us.
The Huskies scared me a little bit, though. They didn't cover the kickoffs as well as I thought they might. A couple of those almost broke, it looked like. And, man, to me, in today's world, just kick it through the end zone and be done with it. You got to have a guy who could just kick it out of sight.
I'll tell you one thing. Of all the games, Washington's sitting at 14-0, which is truly impressive. in order to get over the hump and win a championship. Like, this will be their toughest battle all season, coming up on Monday.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Physically, that's going to be a problem for Washington. Like, they're going to have to match up, and DeBoer and Grubb are going to have to come up with some great scheming and ways to. Man, that's going to be tough. I can't wait to see the coaching battle there, because physically Michigan's a different type of animal. I mean, the way that they come after you, that defense, yeah, it's going to be tough. I'm pulling for Washington. I do not want Michigan to get over. I've just about had it of Wolverine fans acting like the victim here when they're the cheaters. It drives me crazy.
How many times after a game are they going to talk about all the adversity they've been through?
Yeah,
it's not
self-inflicted.
adversity when you created it.
Yeah, your coach cheated and put you guys in a bad spot.
Yeah, be mad at him. He created the adversity.
Yeah, well, coaches are masters at being able to craft whatever message they want to get their guys all fired up.
Yeah.
Us against the world. People are disrespecting us. We cheated, but I don't really think we're cheaters, so let's go out there and prove everyone wrong. Like, the whole thing, it's all weird to me.
Well, and now Harbaugh he's positioning this whole thing as, well, it was good for us. It was really good because we survived it and got through it, so we learned from it, and we got better because of it. So it's a real good break for us.
Yeah, but his players have bought in. You got to give Harbaugh credit for making mistakes and then navigating his crew and somehow getting them more motivated.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what he's been able to do. So I just don't think we could ask for much more. This game's going to be fascinating in terms of style, because two totally different style of teams. One team wants to line up and just maul you with their physicality, and the other team wants to showcase their speed and their talent at the quarterback and receiver position. And it's pretty clear that the Washington receivers with Odunze and company, those guys are freaking awesome. They're
They
studs.
are amazing.
Studs. Not only are they great, but Penix knows how to put the ball in situations to give his receiver the best chance. And when you put those two things together, look what you got.
Yeah, it shows you, too. In this new world of college football, when you go out and pay a pretty penny for your quarterback, you better have a little more cash in the drawer to get those receivers. Because, man, they have made Penix look good many times this season with great catches. Just 50-50 balls that they go up and get.
4.5 points seems a little bit high.
They live with that. The Huskies have been 4-point underdogs a lot of times this year. It just seems like they live with that.
I couldn't believe, one, that they were a 10-point dog to Oregon. That was ridiculous.
Crazy.
But also to be an underdog to Texas. I never once thought Texas was a better football team than Washington. I never once thought that. Not once. I'm like, wait a second. I watched Texas play all year. I think they're a good football team, but better than Washington? With that secondary and their pass defense, are you kidding me? That was like free money they were offered up in that game.
It's all the old Southern football. We're tough. We're physical. We're going to beat them kids from the West Coast up. No, I don't think so.
Well, I think it was John Middlecoff who said it, right? If Washington was Alabama, they would be favored in the game against Michigan.
Yeah.
But because they're tucked away in the Northwest and most people haven't seen them play the majority of their games, you get a certain perception or idea of what they're about. But this game's got everything. Two good quarterbacks, two great coaches, two experienced football teams. Like, this is everything you want in a title game.
Well, and the Huskies are physical, too. You know, you don't have the best offensive line in football unless you're a pretty physical group. And they were physical against the Ducks, I'll tell you that, because Oregon thought it was physical. That didn't work out so well.
Yeah, they don't have to run it. They just need enough of a running threat to be able to, give Penix enough options to work with, right? Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. The one thing that's going to be fun to watch is that the Michigan secondary is super legit with big-time players. So you finally have a team that can match up with those Washington receivers, and we'll see how that battle goes. That's going to be great. Mm-hmm. The frustrating part for Michigan, and just like with every other team that plays Washington, like, you won't be able to get a hand on Penix because he's not going to hold on to the football. He'll just get rid of it. He gets rid of it so quick that you can't get to him. Even when a play breaks down, the ball is out of his hand. Coaches love that. Offensive linemen love that. Receivers love it because the ball is going to come out when it's supposed to come out. Mm-hmm. Isn't that nice? It's nice to have an offense that functions like that. So it's frustrating to you can't get to him.
He can extend plays, too, though. How many times did he, roll out just a little bit or step back or step up or whatever and keep a play alive? He's pretty good at that. He's clever.
I still can't believe that play. That a player goes down, the other team has no timeouts, and they get rewarded because you have an injury in that spot. That is
rule's gotta be
unbelievable.
changed.
You got to change it. College football's got a couple of rules that drive me crazy. 1 foot down, inbounds is a reception. I think it should be 2 feet. I hate that a player catches a ball in the open field, has to go to a knee to get it, and he's down right there. Not by contact, but just because his knee was down. They don't let you get up and run.
I hate that, too. I think you should have to be tackled. Just falling down, you ought to be able to get up and run.
Yeah, but not in college football. I don't like that. And obviously, if a player goes down and you reward the other team with a timeout and you don't restart the clock when they're ready to punt, that's really, I just don't like it because it gave Texas life in a situation where they'd already burned all their timeouts and should have had no life.
Carry that out to the extreme, though. It's an incentive to hurt somebody. I mean, when you think about it, if you're on defense and you need time, so you go in and you hit, even if you have to hit a guy late, he's got to be carried off the field. Clock stops. You got all the time you need.
Yeah, it's just amazing how that worked out like that. And then Texas got down in a position, but yours couldn't make the right throw at the right time. Mm-hmm. It felt like they were going to score in that situation.
Ooh. How bad? Everybody in the country would have been talking about how bad a choke that was by Washington.
Yeah, a total collapse. Player goes down, it stops the clock. You get the 15-yard penalty on the special teams, and then Texas goes down and gets the score.
I got to tell you, Chad, I already had the tweet written if that would have happened.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, guess what it was?
I can't wait to find out. Tell me.
You can take the team out of the Pac-12, but you can't take the Pac-12 out of the team.
Hey-oh!
Well, that would have been a Pac-12 thing to happen, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Thank God you didn't have to send that tweet.
I know. I quickly erased it.
All right, we have more Blazer tickets that we're going to give away coming up at 5 o'clock. Blazers and Suns coming up at Moda Center. So your chance to see the team in action. Scoop playing better basketball. We'll get to that coming up at 5. When we come back, we got to talk about the AFC. Baltimore has separated themselves from the pack over the last couple of weeks. How about that whooping they put on Miami?
Whew, man, that was something. Well, Miami's Miami, I guess. You keep thinking, with all the weapons they have, and their defense isn't bad.
Look at what Baltimore's done this year. They completely destroyed Detroit.
Yeah.
They destroyed San Francisco, and they humiliated the Dolphins.
Dismantled them, yes.
And Lamar's going to win an MVP again this year.
Yeah, he is.
The guy's a superstar.
Unanimous, probably.
He'll go unanimous again.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can pick anyone else out of the group now and not point to Lamar as the MVP.
He's separated himself, no question.
Baltimore looks good. So we'll get to that next. Trailblazer tickets coming up at 5, and then we'll talk football with our expert, Joe DeLeon, at 5:20.
It's Rip City Drive on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Godfather, we've been back and forth on this throughout the year. Are there any doubts in your mind who the best team in the AFC is now?
Oh, I think it's Baltimore. I think Baltimore is the best team right now in the AFC. But I'm not sure they're going to make it to the Super Bowl.
Why? They're going to have the bye week. They will have two games at home, one less than everyone else. Why do you doubt Baltimore right now?
I'm still not totally buying Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. He's had problems in the past. I never liked him because he did not consistently throw the ball well. Now he's made massive improvements in his ability to throw the forward pass. Don't get me wrong. He's a lot better. But I got to see it in the playoffs, and I'm still not sure. I think, and you mentioned this earlier, Cleveland could give him some trouble. You have to have a real controlled rush on him, or he escapes from the pocket, and then you have a real problem on your hands. But you have to get him to rush his throws a little bit, and somebody along the way will do that, and he'll either have a bad game throwing the ball, or he'll get hurt, which he's been hurt a lot in the last couple of years. This year, he's been injury-free. Good for him.
24 touchdowns, 7 picks on the year. He's thrown for nearly 3,700 yards, completing 67% of his passes. Mm-hmm. He's rushed for another nearly 900 yards. He's going to win the MVP, of course.
Unanimously, yeah.
I just looked at the AFC, whether it's Miami, who they just annihilated, Kansas City, who's got tremendous issues. That team is leaking oil right now. Jacksonville's a joke. Cleveland playing good football with Joe Flacco. I would agree with you. I think that that's a team that knows them in division, physical team with a great defense. That could be the one problem. But outside of that, Buffalo, if they make it, and I don't think they're going to, Indianapolis or Houston. I just look at the AFC this year. You know, I've learned over time, just trust what your eyes are telling you. Last year, Philadelphia, from the start all the way up until the finish, I knew they were the best team in the NFC, and I didn't doubt that they were going to reach the Super Bowl, and they got there. Baltimore is telling me the same thing this year. They've been the best team from start up until right now, and they're going to have the extra rest, and they get to play 2 games at home, and Lamar Jackson is playing the best football of his entire career right now, and defensively, they are a serious problem, and they're well coached. Yeah, so I have no doubt in my mind that Baltimore is going to be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl, and I love Lamar Jackson. His teammates love him. Baltimore loves him. I'm a big fan of his for the way he works and his attitude and his approach to the game. So I want to see him get to that spot. He does need to get that monkey off his back in terms of, playoffs. Mm-hmm. He knows that, but that's okay. He can use those other experiences as an opportunity to make sure that they get this right, and I think they will. They've never been better prepared with Lamar than they are right now. But these other teams, every other team in the AFC, I can look at and say, it's just not their year. They're pretenders. Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Buffalo if they make it, Indianapolis. Those teams all pale in comparison to Baltimore.
Yeah, things just tighten up a little bit in the playoffs, though. Teams get tight, coaches get tight, and there's not as many mistakes. Crazy things happen, and they've happened all year in the NFL this year. We've seen some teams win games that seemingly you thought had no chance to win. There's major upsets every week, not just upsets by good teams, but upsets by teams that you figure, gosh, how can they go in there and win on the road? But they do, and somebody's going to get them. I just think that.
Well, I think you're crazy to think that.
Yeah.
Their losses this year, early in the season to the Colts, week 3. Early in the season at the Steelers, 17-10, and they lost a home game on the final kick of the game, 33-31 to the Browns. Those are their games. Outside of that, they've crushed all the better competition, including the 49ers, the Dolphins, and the Lions. And they didn't just beat those teams, they completely smoked them. They crushed Detroit 38-6. They crushed the 49ers 33-19 on the road, and they just disposed of the Dolphins 56-19. The other advantage for Baltimore is that they're going to rest their guys this weekend and give them extra time to prepare for the playoffs. So Lamar not only will be healthy, but he'll be as close to 100% as you could hope for as the playoffs will get underway for them.
So you think they'll give him this week off entirely? So he'd have 2 weeks in a row off?
Absolutely. Playing him against the Steelers in a game that means nothing is malpractice, in my opinion. You absolutely, because if you play him, all because you don't want the rust to pile up, and he gets hurt, then you're going to be an idiot forever. Thanks a lot. You played him in a game when you have the number one seed wrapped up and he gets hurt. No coach wants that. Just give him the day off, let him rest, and get the team ready. It's risky. Anytime you have the bye week, you've got to worry about rust. But I would rather have the bye week and deal with rust and have a healthy quarterback than play him in a meaningless game and risk injury.
Sure.
And the problem with him, if you play him against the Steelers like to hit people, right? And Lamar's not a type of guy to shy away from contact. You got to protect him from himself in this game. So, I do not expect Lamar to play. What about the NFC? Who, if anyone, can challenge the 49ers?
It's the 49ers for me.
All right. I can't believe you're doubting Baltimore. When you haven't given me a good case for – your best case is Joe Flacco and the Browns. Joe Flacco. That's your case against Baltimore.
Playing really well right now.
Yeah. We'll see what happens come postseason time. He's playing good football. No, he's playing good football.
Yeah.
I also know that magical carpet ride's not going to last forever either.
We'll see.
If I have to put my money on Joe Flacco or Lamar Jackson come playoff time, I'll put my money on Lamar Jackson and Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, Joe's got that Super Bowl ring that Lamar doesn't have. I will say that.
Yeah? And what has that got to do with anything? Nick Foles has got a Super Bowl ring that Lamar Jackson doesn't have, too.
Yeah.
Dan Marino doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. Would you rather be Joe Flacco or Dan Marino?
Right now, Joe Flacco.
What?
Right now?
Oh, get out.
Are you kidding me?
Whose career would you rather have?
Joe Flacco's still
Sometimes
playing.
you're just talking out of your backside.
Money.
Get out of here.
No.
Whose resume would you rather have, Dan Marino's or Joe Flacco's?
Oh, you're talking resume. You said who would you want to be right now? Right now, Joe Flacco. He's
Well,
still
of course.
playing.
Yeah, of course he's still playing. One guy retired
okay.
like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys who don't have rings. You're suddenly playing the ring game on me. Good for Flacco. He's got a ring.
Yeah.
I'm happy for him.
Well, I choose not to ignore the fact that Lamar Jackson has not played well in the playoffs.
You're right. He has not gotten over in the playoffs yet.
And there's real reasons. It's not like he's had bad luck or anything like that. He hasn't played well.
Yeah.
And some guys are just wired that way that when you get down to that time, can they do it? I don't know.
Do you think Lamar Jackson is wired that way to where he can't get over in a clutch situation? Do you think that's how he's wired?
Well, we'll see.
I'm asking you if you think that's how he's wired.
I don't know. That's why I say we'll see this year. We'll see. He's favored. He's supposed to, but he was MVP before. I don't know what to tell you about that. Let's see what he does.
Well, there's no question that anything less than getting to the Super Bowl is a complete disaster for Baltimore.
Yeah.
It's Super Bowl or bust. No
Which
excuses.
means a lot of pressure.
That's good. Great players perform under that pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll find out if he's a great player.
I'm just telling you, I heard that for years about Elway. Can't win the big one. Can't win the big one.
I know.
It was the last thing on my mind going into the game against Green Bay. I wasn't worried about Elway. I knew he would be fine. The idea that Lamar can't win the big one, I'm convinced that Lamar can get the job done.
Lamar is not John Elway, though.
I never said that. I don't think anyone's John Elway.
Well, you're comparing the two situations, and I would say I never worried about Elway either.
I'm not worried about Lamar. I think he's going to play well and get his team to the Super Bowl. I have no doubt in my mind. Baltimore is clearly the best team. They've proven it. We've had a full year now to see who the best team in the AFC is. And without question, it's Baltimore. And it's not even close. I mean, if you look at every other team right now, they've got issues. Miami, do you take them seriously?
No. I haven't all year, actually.
Buffalo hasn't been legit all year. They've got issues. Cleveland is playing the best of all the other AFC teams right now with Joe Flacco. Pittsburgh's probably going to get in. I don't take them seriously.
And you're just going to write off Kansas City, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, because they're going to have to play on the road, and I just look at their play. They have not played well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that with the roster they have this year, they're suddenly going to flip a switch and magically start playing great football and winning football games on the road. So, no, I don't think. They were my pick before the year began, but the season has played out. And Kansas City, just like Tom Brady for a decade, didn't get to a Super Bowl. Mahomes will have years like this where the team around him is not good enough. They're not good enough. I mean, you've seen enough of them. Do you think they're good enough?
No, not right now. But I wouldn't easily write them off because of the quarterback and the coach.
Yeah, but they still have their receiver issues, and Travis Kelce's not playing good football.
Yeah, they had receiver issues last year until they got to the playoffs.
They had better receivers last year than they do this year, and Kelce wasn't old like he is right now last year.
I think he's not old. He's just preoccupied.
There have been plenty of players who have performed at a high level being preoccupied. It's not like he's the only athlete to date a hot chick. Come on
The
now.
only one to date her, I'll tell you that.
She's not the hottest chick that an NFL player's ever dated. Come on now.
Okay.
So now you're saying that she's like the number one of all
when
chicks.
When you're dating her, it's a whole different. It's not just her hotness.
I'm telling you right now,
celebrity.
Kansas City.
It's how much attention she gets.
I don't
All
think
of that.
That's not the reason for his poor play. The fact that he's aging is the problem. And because there's no other guys on the field to draw attention to, the defense can now center on him because they're not worried about these other bums they got playing wide receiver. I love Patrick Mahomes and I love Andy Reid, but this team this year, they're not good enough to get to the Super Bowl. And if they have to play at Baltimore, they will get destroyed because they got issues. With that secondary that Baltimore has and the receivers that Kansas City's got, if Patrick Mahomes has to go there, good luck with that. And they'll be able to get pressure on him, too. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, we got more tickets to give away. Your chance to see the Suns and Trailblazers, and we'll talk a little Scoot. Joe DeLeon talking football 520.
We are Fox Sports.
And here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, what's going on, my friends? Now 5 o'clock. Happy New Year. The Trailblazers lost the first of their 7-game road trip last night in Phoenix. Scoot did lead the team with 17 points. He got the start, played nearly 34 minutes. Next up, they'll take on Luka and the Mavericks in Dallas tomorrow. Tip-off is at 5:30. Game day will be at 3 here on 620 Rip City Radio. We're going to give away a pair of tickets for the Blazers and Suns coming up next on the Rip City Drive. Just listen to us for a chance to win. National title is set. Washington and Michigan Monday night in Houston. The Wolverines right now a 4.5-point favorite. The game will kick off at 4:30. It'll be on ESPN. From the NFL, Sean McVay's back to coach the Rams next year. Dalvin Cook has been cut by the Jets. He's now free to sign with the contender, and Bill Belichick says he's focused on the Jets, Jets, and not his coaching future. We're going to talk football with Joe DeLeon from the Believe Podcast Network coming up at 5:20.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's time for the big story of the day on the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. The big story of the day is presented by Power Kia. The biggest selection of Kias in Oregon is at powerkia.com.
Well, how about that weather out there today, Godfather?
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Gosh. This is it. This is winter. It's going to be like this for the next 2 or 3 months.
All I know is that we have 3 months left of Trailblazer basketball. I just have to grind to the next 3 months, and then golf season will be up on me.
Yeah.
That's my main focus right now.
Yeah.
50 more games to go.
Is that all? 50?
50.
Oh, man.
That's right. Counting down the time.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to go gangster this year. I'm going to live life like it's my last year, and I'm going to play golf constantly. I can't wait for warmer weather, the green grass, the freshly cut grass, the smells, everything.
Have you got any golf vacations planned? You going to get away for a weekend and play somewhere?
My golf vacation is to play every day. Every day's a vacation come nice weather and no Trailblazer basketball. That's how I roll. All right, we have tickets to give away. Should I be nice to Shacker again and give him a reasonable number?
Yeah.
What did we do last week? Was that caller 100 we did?
Yeah. He worked this morning, so take it easy on the
I know.
man.
I have so much respect for Michael Shacker. It's hard to find guys you can depend upon. Shacker is a guy you can depend upon.
Yeah.
When he was down there working it, and he's got to keep Mike Parker and Jim Wilson together when the Beavs are getting thrashed, too. He's a counselor. He's a producer. He's an engineer. He does everything. He does everything.
I felt for Mike Parker. He sounded a little bit down there as that game progressed.
Shacker also made the mistake of consuming soup that had contaminated water, so it made his trip a little more difficult.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that include the flight back? Was he still dealing with that?
Oh, it was bad.
He was in a better situation on the flight back. I did not notice any unfortunate circumstances on the flight, but it was only an hour and 20 minutes, so.
Had he been down in Mexico to get that soup, or what?
No, it's the El Paso water. Every time I've been there.
We believe the El Paso water may be contaminated as well. It's quite possible.
Wow.
Yeah, good times. Good times.
Good times.
All right, we'll take caller number 6 right now, 503-248-0620. It's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Every Tuesday throughout the basketball season, we give you your chance to win Trailblazer tickets. Caller 6 right now. Fire away! 503-248-0620. Call, 503-248-0620. Caller 6 will get a pair of tickets for the Blazers and Suns coming up at Moda Center. And, of course, for all your Trailblazer ticket needs, head on over to trailblazers.com and listen to us every Tuesday throughout the entire basketball season as we give you tickets for upcoming Trailblazer games courtesy of 620 Rip City Radio and your Portland Trailblazers. All right. That didn't take long. Scoot Henderson led the team last night, 17 points, had the big game last Friday against San Antonio. He's playing some better basketball, which is nice to see.
You know, Chad, it's and I kind of made up my mind this year not to look at stats too much with him because you can see improvement better with your eyeballs than you can by the stats. But you can't ignore what he's been doing just in December, but even more focused on the last 10 games. In the last 10 games, he's averaging 15.6 points, 5.5 assists, and he's, believe it or not, he's shooting 38.9% from three in his last 10 games. Now, I don't know that he can hold that percentage up that high, but it's certainly a lot better, and it's the kind of improvement we're going to see. And I want to mention to people, too, don't get too carried away yet, because that improvement arc is not going to just go straight up. There's going to be some blips. They're going to be on the road for a 7-game road trip. There's going to be a couple of those nights where you're just not going to see it, because improvement or just taking a jump shot from the elbow, Chad, it's really been quick and remarkable. It is with what he's been doing.
All right, let's take a listen to Chauncey Billups talking about Scoot after the game last night.
He has. He's taken some important steps, in his rookie year, in his process. He's starting to understand what's necessary on both sides of the ball for a guy, especially that's a point guard. The demands on a point guard I've always thought are totally different than everybody else. And it's always tough for young guards to get that, and he's starting to figure that part out, and that's, to me, that's why he's played so well. The game is kind of coming to him now, and he's not having to go chase after it, so much.
All right, one other thing from Billups talking about the extended minutes for Scoot and the impact that's having.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, and I don't think it has to do with starting, because when Scoot came back, we was bringing him off the bench and he was playing great. I just think now extended minutes, obviously an extended opportunity with other guys out, obviously the numbers will change a little bit, but man, since he's been back, I just think that Scoot is, he's continued to get better and better.
All right, this is going to continue to be an issue throughout the year, Godfather.
Yeah.
What Chauncey Billups decides to do with the rotation, right?
Well, when he comes out and says extended minutes have helped him, yeah, and he's still only, in December, he's averaged 28 minutes a game, okay? That's still probably not enough. I think we both wanted to see more than that. I'd like to see him get into the 30s, for heaven's sakes. But I just worry now when Simons comes back, you already have Brogdon, you already have Sharp. What's going to happen then? To me, he's got to stay right there where he is at the point. And I don't see any reason not to stick with that.
I would start Scoot and Ant together moving forward.
Yeah. See how that looks.
And even if there's injuries in the lineup, I continue to start Scoot. You got to start him because the only way you're going to get his minute totals up into the 33 to 38 range is to start him. And the last two games, I think he had near 38 against San Antonio on Friday. He had almost 34 last night. You got to continue to play him big minutes.
Yeah, and now you don't have to say you're doing him a favor to do that, or it's developmental or anything. He's playing that well that he should. He should be playing more. And I think he's earned it. He's done what he's supposed to do.
Well, I keep going back to this. It's like, what are we doing here? Are you trying to win games? Or are you trying to develop the youngsters?
Great point.
I mean, that's the way I look at the season. I have no issue with what the Trailblazers are doing right now. They made a decision as an organization to rebuild from the ground up. I have no issue with that whatsoever. It was probably the absolute right decision. But in order to do that, you have to embrace it fully, which means you just have to run the young guys out there, especially someone that you invested a lot in, Scoot, who was taken number 3 overall in the draft. And I'm a big believer, like we've seen so far this year, that if you get him more minutes, he's only going to continue to progress. I don't like him coming off the bench because even though he's done fine coming off the bench, you and I both know that it's a different mindset and mentality. It's much easier to get into a rhythm as a player if you know night in and night out you're starting, you know what your minutes are going to be, you can practice and prepare for that. It makes it much easier on a young player.
Well, not only that, Chad, I think you want your point guard to be your leader on the floor. And this kid has that sort of personality and charisma to be a leader. He's shown it already. You're not going to be that leader if you're coming in off the bench. It just doesn't work as well.
No.
So I think they have to establish that right now. He's earned that.
But the other key, too, is and when you make that decision to start him, you also know that means starting him even when he's not playing well.
Yeah, right. Sticking with him. Yeah.
No matter what, you continue to play him. That means even if he goes through a 2-week stretch where he's just brutal, you continue to start him and let him work through that because that's how guys develop and get better.
Mm-hmm.
I like his demeanor. I like his work ethic. I like his attention to detail. He does all the little things. From everything I'm hearing about him, he's the type of player you want. And his attitude, even through the struggles, has been fine. He's not concerned because he's working. He knows the type of work he's putting in.
Right. And he doesn't back down. You can see that on the floor. He's a bulldog. He really is. And that's what you need at that position. A tough guy to set a tone. And they haven't had that here for a while. Terry Porter was a tough guy. And that really set a tone for those teams in the early 90s.
All right. Who's going to win next Monday, Michigan or Washington? And what about Penix, McCarthy, and Nix in the draft? Where are they slotted? We'll talk with Joe DeLeon coming up next on the Rip City Drive.
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, I'm so happy our next guest had time to join us today. You can follow him on X at Joe DeLeon, college football and NFL draft analyst for the Believe Network, also the First Team Pod, and he's back on the show. Joe, thank you for coming on. Happy New Year, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. It's been a pretty crazy New Year with the games that happened yesterday, and I'm excited for what's going to come up this upcoming Monday.
Oh, us too, man. We're pumped for the matchups. Yesterday was a beautiful day of college football. So I'll ask you this. What's your first thought on the matchup with Washington and Michigan?
Yeah, the main thing I'm really focused on is the fact that Michigan hasn't even come close to facing a team that's structured the way that Washington is. The way that they've moved the ball down the field, how quickly they've been able to score. And we saw in full effect how offensively potent Washington is against Texas. So Michigan not having experience facing a group of receivers this talented, an offense and a quarterback that is in such a rhythm, I'm a little fearful of what could happen in this game.
You know, Joe, we're up here in the Northwest watching Washington all season, and they have been doubted constantly. They were under like 9 or 10 point underdogs to the Ducks, for crying out loud. Why do people keep doubting them?
Well, because they're not winning in the way that everybody wants them to. They're not playing the same style that Michigan and Alabama and Georgia and all these good teams this year and in the past have done that dictates and describes the national championship winning team. And, of course, I mean, running the ball, playing really good stout defense, controlling the clock. They don't need to do that in order to win. And that's why they've been doubted to this point, because their defense does have weaknesses. They do give up pretty big rushing plays. They, had some issues in their secondary. They haven't been totally consistent. But what has made them so hard to keep up with is, one, they step up to challenges when they are asked to, but they then force opposing teams to play catch-up. They score so quickly that all these opposing teams abandon their game plan, and we watched Texas do this where they were running the ball well, and then for some reason they got away from it because they were doing too much to try to replicate what Washington was doing. So because of how fast they are, how explosive they are, it has been so hard for teams to keep up with. And again, I think that's why everyone keeps doubting them, because they're just not like every other team.
Hey, Joe, you pay attention to this kind of stuff, and we're becoming aware right now, but how good is Kalen DeBoer, and how about that combination between him and Ryan Grubb?
Yeah, that is a fantastic coaching staff that they have for Washington right now. And admittedly, it was something I was just discussing on one of my shows, that I wonder if an SEC program in a year or so doesn't try to take a run at DeBoer, but I feel like DeBoer is in such a good situation that it would make sense for him to stay. The offensive prowess that him and Grubb have, what they have put together is just amazing. It is truly commendable to take a bunch of guys that were really low 4 stars, 3-star players, transfers, and turn them into the best offense in the country. It really deserves more recognition for what Washington's coaching staff has done. And I feel like after the Alabama game, all we're doing is talking about Jim Harbaugh and how good that coaching staff is. And it is a good coaching staff, but, man, Washington's staff is right up there with them, and they deserve equally as much recognition.
What do you expect to be the biggest challenge for Washington coming into this game?
I think the biggest challenge has to be protecting Michael Penix, and they've done a really good job of doing that. They've been at least effective enough against some good defensive lines to keep him upright, and Penix has such good pocket awareness that he still finds ways to get the ball out and deliver to his receivers. But they can't allow the best defensive line that they're going to face this season to tee off on him. They were really creative in going after Michigan was in going after Jalen Milroe by sending the pressure with their fast, athletic linebackers. If there is a similar approach, Washington could be in some trouble. So they have to do a good job of blitz pickup. They have to do a good job of getting the ball out quick and get Michigan on their heels. Otherwise, it could be a bit of a rough day for that Washington offense.
We're talking with Joe DeLeon from the Believe Podcast Network here on the Rip City Drive. One of my listeners, Jeffrey, who I think is a Washington fan, he wants to know if you think Penix got robbed from the Heisman.
Oh, man, I was a big fan of Penix at the beginning of the season, but it's too hard for me to say that he was robbed of it. I think that for different reasons, he or Jane Daniels should have won the award because of those couple of games where Penix was a little bit off the mark, and I know there was the speculation that he was battling the flu, and then there was also speculation that maybe he was a little bit dinged up. But it's hard to not give that award to Jane Daniels. I know that winning important games is really critical for the award, but for the stats that he put up, you have to overlook it a little bit. I think that if Jane Daniels doesn't exist, absolutely I'm giving that award to Michael Penix.
Okay, here's the thing, Joe. There's some pretty good quarterbacks out there this year. The two in this game, where are they going to be picked in the draft?
Yeah, I think that Michael Penix, because of his injury history, he's got a lot of injuries that he's dealt with in his career and to significant parts of his body. It could push him out of the first round. I think that we saw this with Hendon Hooker last year, where it was just a one singular knee injury that really created a question mark. And had Hendon Hooker not gotten hurt, he probably would have been a first-round pick. But because he didn't get to do the pre-draft process and then the medicals, it really complicated things. Penix has the benefit of being able to still go through the pre-draft process. But again, once that medical check goes through, they're going to discover – I'm not necessarily saying they're going to discover any red flags, but there's going to be concern by some NFL teams that they don't want to invest in a quarterback that they're worried might not be fully available all the time. So that might push him to the back end of the first round or early in the second. I don't think J.J. McCarthy should declare. I really think that J.J. McCarthy is better off going back to school. He played a good game, not a great game against Alabama, but there's just so many processing and decision-making issues that I see in his game, and him going back one more year would give him more time and experience and exposure, more reps that would help make him a more well-rounded player. And the biggest thing here, J.J. McCarthy is not going to be in the discussion of the top three quarterbacks in the class. I feel like we are already pretty sure that it's going to be some order of Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then Jane Daniels. And then this conversation of who's next, is it Bo Nix, is it Michael Penix? If he ends up getting drafted, it's not going to be this until being outside of that top five quarterback conversation. So it doesn't totally benefit him to declare, and he's better off waiting until next season when there's much more of an open competition for the top spot.
Where do you see Bo Nix going?
I think somewhere in the top 20. I think that Bo Nix is going to intrigue the right team. I think a team like the Atlanta Falcons that's looking for someone who's experienced, somebody who's older, somebody who's mature, that they're not maybe looking for the highest ceiling, but they're just looking for somebody who's going to keep their offense on schedule and that they can be in a better position to win sooner. And so I think that Falcons pick is the best example, because if Arthur Smith isn't let go as the head coach, he's going to want to do whatever he can to extend his time. And if that in that bad conference, if you get Bo Nix with all those weapons, you can prepare yourself for at least winning the conference, maybe being one win above 500 like the Bucs are about to do, go to the playoffs, and buy yourself some time. So somewhere in that top 15 for a team that is looking for a next step in a future, but a guy who is possibly on the younger side.
Hey, Joe, we know the Raiders will probably have interest. Apparently the Chargers want to shake the label of being a cheap franchise. Where do you expect Jim Harbaugh to be coaching next year?
I think it's all going to come down to what happens in this game, but at the end of the day, it makes more sense for him to jump to the NFL because of all of the allegations and everything that's coming against him. I'm sure that the NCAA is only going to make his life more difficult if he decides to stick around, but it makes a lot of sense for him to be with the Chargers or the Bears. He's got ties to both organizations, but it sounds like the Bears are going to be sticking with Eberflus. But the Chargers would make a lot of sense because he was previously once a coach in Southern California when he was the coach at the University of San Diego, rather. And they are probably the most desirable team to go to because they already have their quarterback. You see already a really highly talented kid that if you can get the rest of that roster right, there's no reason why they can't be competing for AFC West titles every single year if he's the head coach.
Joe, what do you see Sean Payton doing in terms of getting a quarterback in there that he likes.
Yeah, that is going to be a really difficult uphill process for him. And they're a team I would actually consider to be in the market for someone like Michael Penix or Bo Nix, because they might need to draft someone that they can bring in that's a little bit more ready to play, but maybe doesn't have a higher ceiling. At the end of the day, that they're also probably going to need to be in the market for somebody who's on the trade market. There's just not a lot of good options. Can you entice getting Kirk Cousins over? I don't know if the Vikings are going to be so quick to, depart from him, or at the same time, are guys like Daniel Jones or Justin Fields exciting to go after, and does that really solve the problems for the price that you're going to have to pay him? They're in a really difficult spot, and it's terrible that they couldn't keep that relationship more cordial, because they're not going to have a lot of options, and it could really slow down the progression for the Broncos being a competitive team in the future.
All right, you can follow him on Twitter at Joe DeLeon. He is a college football and NFL draft analyst and an excellent one with the Believe Podcast Network and the First Team Pod. Hey, Joe, we appreciate the time. Real quick, it sounds like you like Washington on Monday. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm picking Washington right now. I think they're going to win it.
All right, we appreciate the time, buddy. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the game on Monday, and we'll talk again.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go. Joe DeLeon.
Nice.
Off to his next radio hit. He's a busy man right now.
Yeah. Well, he's got a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
Well, the Broncos are screwed, but what I would do, they don't have a second-round pick, so they're going to be selecting around 14 in the first round of the NFL draft. You cannot reach on a quarterback, so do not reach on a guy unless you truly believe he's your guy. But I do wonder if Bo Nix might be a Sean Payton-type quarterback. Incredibly efficient, accurate with the football.
Smart.
I would be open to the Broncos taking Bo Nix if that's truly who Sean Payton wants to work with. You can't be reaching on a guy in hopes that it works out. They'd be better off just playing what's his nuts for next year and then going back into the draft the following year to get a quarterback. Jared Stidham.
He does have a name.
Gosh.
It's Stiddy, I think they call him.
Whatever.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this time, Sean Payton better love the guy. He better get a guy that he loves, that he'll stick with, that he'll back, and that he can make work. Because, he doesn't need a do-over on this one.
No, he's just in the perfect spot where he's like, hey, that's not my quarterback.
Yeah.
And he probably let the ownership know that from the get-go. My guess is Sean Payton knew before he took the job whether he wanted to work with Russ or not.
Yeah.
And based on the reports that are coming out, my guess is he probably let him know up front, like, we'll get through this year, but I want to work with a different guy. And the question is, what do you do? The problem is when you don't have many draft picks, 6 to be exact, and you got multiple holes on the team, and you don't have free agent dollars because you're taking a massive cap hit on Russ, you might be better off playing Jared Stidham unless you're convinced that Nix or Penix or one of these other guys is the right quarterback for you. You know what I'm saying? You can't waste a first-round pick on a guy you're not sure of.
Right.
At quarterback. Like a lot of teams do. They're idiots.
Yeah. But if he takes one of those guys, it means
he
really
believes
does,
in them.
Yeah. He thinks that's the guy.
So if the Broncos are sitting there at 14 and they take Bo Nix, that means that Sean Payton can't wait to work with Bo Nix.
Right.
If they don't take a quarterback in the first round, that tells you that we didn't like any of the guys who were available. Because they desperately need a quarterback. They'll just go with Jared Stidham and play out the year and then look to the following draft to go out and locate their guy.
He's got a long-term deal.
Yeah,
Sean Payton.
Yeah, Payton's he's making $18 million a year. Yeah. He's got full control. He's got nothing to worry about. He's got time. But there's no doubt it's going to go Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then my guess would be Jaden Daniels, and then you'll see Nix and Penix, and we'll find out where they're going to go. I agree with him on McCarthy. I've watched McCarthy. I like him in college, but I don't see a pro quarterback right now when he's playing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're running that offense very conservatively, and I think it's partly by design. They don't want to put their quarterback in a position to lose games for him.
And by next year, he'd be able to make a pretty penny as a returning NIL guy for them. They'd pay him handsomely.
Oh, my gosh.
Wouldn't they? Oh, man.
Of course they would. And if he comes back, Harbaugh might stay for another year to get a chance to coach him. Or Harbaugh's in a great spot, too. NFL desires him, and he's obviously got Michigan back on the top, so they're going to be desperate to keep him. He can just drive up the price for whatever team's going to select him. You might as well try and take advantage of Mark Davis. He'll overpay for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting in Michigan, though. The AD apparently doesn't like him, correct? Isn't that the case that there's a problem between him and the AD?
Yeah.
So the AD may not particularly care if he comes back or not.
That's true, but ADs are usually in a situation where don't screw up your football coach hire or don't tick off a guy that everyone loves because he's got your team in a position to win, or you could lose your job real quick.
Yeah.
That football coach hire for ADs is critical. The fact that they were asking Harbaugh to take a pay cut a couple of years ago is laughable to me. I mean, the guy comes in, again, because no one's patient, it takes time to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And Harbaugh, through his work, finally built the program and his image, and look at him now. They win almost every game. They've got a chance to win a national championship. This is the third time they've been in the playoff. It's not bad.
I think if he stays, they'll be back next year, too.
Well, they're going to lose a lot of guys to the NFL draft. Like a lot of guys.
Yeah,
so,
he's recruited really well.
I know, but I'm just saying that part of the reason why he's where he's at right now is because of the experience on that squad. Even Kirby Smart and Nick Saban go through some adjustments when they got, when you got a young batch of guys coming in. Plus, the Big Ten is going to become a lot more competitive next year.
Oh, yeah.
And look, like the schedule, I think was it Michigan? Let's take a look at that. This is what's great. College football is changing for the better, and we're going to have some big-time games. The Michigan 2024 football schedule. All right, here's who Michigan has got coming up in 2024. So they open up with Fresno State. Then they play Texas. They play USC, at Washington, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Gee.
Yeah, that's a different ball game now in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, USC, and Texas.
I think Harbaugh would do well to get the heck out of there. That's going to be a real difficult proposition.
Yeah, so when you say that they're going to get right back to where they were, based on schedule alone, the question is, especially if they win it, what else can you do? You've already returned your program to glory.
Mm-hmm.
Go cash in on the NFL and go after your Super Bowl because you know that's what he wants. He wants a piece of that too.
Yeah, I can't stand his brother's got one and he doesn't.
And you know that comes up regularly in family conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother's in a position to get number 2 now this year.
Did you see the interview with his father, by the way?
Yeah. Spitting image of Jim. They're
Dead
both crazy.
ringer. It's unbelievable.
I mean, the apple does not fall far from the tree.
I don't think John looks like anybody else in the family, but
there's similarities there.
Yeah,
you can see, not like father and son between Jim and his dad, but you can see that John Harbaugh is a Harbaugh, but because he's not insanely crazy like the others, he just kind of
don't you think
makes his own path.
The dad looks a little goofy, doesn't he?
No, he's crazy too. No, they're both known as crazy.
Yeah.
Harbaugh's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Difficult to work with, but he's an absolute winner. Like even the pregame interview on the field right before the game was like, first off, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, right.
Gosh.
Thank you, Jim.
Like but I love Harbaugh. Like I think he's a cheater, but whatever.
I don't care about that.
No.
It's college.
It's college.
They all cheat.
They all cheat. So I'm not worried about that. I just Harbaugh stands for a lot of things I'm down with. I do admit he's crazy, and I know he's difficult to work with. But he can be difficult to work with because he wins.
It's the way it works.
I would be willing to put up with the nonsense from Harbaugh if I knew he was going to build a program. It's like not hiring him is stupid. If you're an NFL team, if you're the Chargers and you got Justin Herbert and you got a chance to bring Jim into your program and you don't do it because you don't want to pay the money, you're dumb. That means you don't really want to win. As you pointed out, not every owner is the same. They're not all just desperate to win because their actions tell me otherwise. Harbaugh's the perfect hire for they should have hired Sean Payton, and they screwed it up.
Mm-hmm.
Now they got a chance to get Harbaugh. What is it going to take? You need 20? I mean, you want 22? How much? Whatever it takes, we'll do it. And you can have full control.
Yeah, buy him a house in Malibu.
And you know within 4 to 5 years, he'll wear out his welcome and get tired and move on. But he's going to restore greatness to your program. Because right now you're looked at as a joke of a franchise in LA where no one cares about you. Because you hire dumb coaches who can't get the job done, you want to underpay, and you're going to frustrate your franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
There's no excuse when you got Justin Herbert to not be in contention. They're not even going to be in the playoffs this year. And that's because they chose to bring back Brandon Staley because they're cheap. And what a dumb move that was.
Terrible.
Whatever. I mean, dude, it's L.A. Brand new stadium, L.A., beautiful sunshine, beautiful people, and Justin Herbert.
And they have no fans in L.A. I mean, let's face it. They have no fans there. They've got to do something that moves the needle. Harbaugh will get them on the front page.
Well, first off, Happy New Year, everyone. Like, it's just like, what?
Thank you.
Oh, that's crazy.
Thanks, Coach.
Like, John probably knows that Jim is crazy.
Oh, yeah. You got to think that. He's grown up with him.
All right, high fives coming up next. Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad with you here on 620 Rip City Radio.
Scoots, just your thoughts on the game tonight. Obviously, a pretty good first quarter. Kind of lost touch in the second quarter.
Yeah.
I know even more in wins or losses. I
Sure.
You're a wins guy. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just doing what I should be doing, honestly. My job on this team is very specific. Push the pace. Continue to. Yeah. I mean, I'm just doing what I should be doing, honestly. I mean, I'm just doing what I should be doing, honestly. My job on this team is very specific. I mean, I think the game is going to continue. Like I keep telling y'all, repetition, it comes with reps, so.
Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Here on 620 Rip City Radio. Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
Please welcome Seattle-based singer-songwriter and guitarist, 14-year-old Nikhil Vega.
Shacker wanted to deliver a high five to that youngster who was at the
Winter Classic.
Yeah, up there in Seattle. Everyone kept telling me Lumen Field, but it was played at T-Mobile Park.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I think I said Lumen Field. It just seemed like that stadium's built better for hockey than like an odd-shaped baseball diamond.
Yeah,
It
I don't
worked
know
out
what the deal
perfectly.
is. See, I don't think the Winter Classic works as well in a climate that isn't. It should be snow and ice. They should have to scrape the snow off the ice. Makes it look more realistic to
Were
me.
they going to close the roof at rain? I mean, the weather turned out to be perfect yesterday for
I
an
know.
outdoor hockey game.
Yeah, it did. It was a little chilly.
I really don't care what city they play it in. It's awesome. It's really cool.
It
They
is.
did it down in San Jose. It was terrific. They did it down at, well, technically Santa Clara. They did it at Levi Stadium.
Yeah, it's a great idea. The NBA has talked for years, about doing a game on a playground,
Yeah.
which would be interesting.
And what did we get? We got the in-season tournament. Good call. Yeah. Thanks, NBA.
Didn't the Blazers used to do an outdoor game in the summer?
Every summer, yeah.
A legitimate game or just a
All-Stars.
Those All-Star, it was a lot of their players and their summer league guys, and they would top it off with entertainment. Jay Leno did stand-up one year there, and they brought somebody else in once. I don't remember who.
Well, if you really want to make it cool, they should do an actual regular season NBA game at Rucker Park.
Yeah,
I'd be on board with that.
yeah. Tell one of their high-priced players falls on the asphalt. Screws
Well,
himself
I'm not
up.
saying do it on the asphalt. They can lay down a hardwood floor.
Yeah,
if
they
you can
could, I
play a
guess.
game on a freaking aircraft carrier, which I've seen them do with college basketball and the Harlem Globetrotters, the NBA could lay down some hardwood and play a game at Rucker Park.
Yeah.
They won't do that because it's too cool and it makes too much sense. But instead, we get the in-season tournament, and we're supposed to care about that.
Well, they couldn't make as much money selling tickets because it wouldn't hold more than about 1,000 people. But
No, but what about TV ratings? That clearly matters to Skeletor.
yeah,
I can tell you're real big on the idea of playing a basketball game elsewhere.
no, I think I'd love it. I think Rucker Park would be great. I just don't think they'd ever do it.
It's amazing, these sport leagues, they just keep giving us things we don't want. The NFL's playing games overseas, never asked for that.
They're going to Brazil to play one. That's
the NBA's
crazy.
giving us the in-season tournament, don't care about that.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, and the Dodgers are opening their seats in Korea.
yeah, didn't ask for that, thank you.
Yeah.
I looked into going over there because I thought that'd be cool, but
Mhm.
it's a little cost-heavy,
Is it? What's a plane ticket over there cost? A couple thousand?
roughly.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome, though. I've never been to South Korea. My dad's been multiple times for work and said it's awesome over there. He said it's cool because you see a lot of technology cars or things that you don't see in the States.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have a lot of room, so they build up there. They get, it's a pretty good setup. And they love baseball over there.
Yeah, it's big.
But the fact that Ohtani is not opening up here is just, it's unconscionable.
Can you imagine? That's terrible.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, baseball gave us a lot of dumb stuff, too. Remember when they used to have the winner of the All-Star game determine home field advantage for the World Series?
Yeah.
That was dumb. What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm talking to the MLB, not you.
No,
that was a bad idea.
Yeah, except I don't know if it's any worse than just alternating it, which they did prior to that.
That's dumb, too.
Yeah.
Why not just give it to the team that earns it with the most wins? How about that?
Well, the problem with that is they don't play the same schedules. But now they do. Now they're playing a balanced schedule.
I went back and I've been watching. I got stuck in YouTube mode the other night, and I settled in on the 1986 NBA All-Star game that was played, I think, at Reunion Arena down in Dallas. Watched the game, and all these idiots who are trying to come up with genius ideas to restore the All-Star game, this is all you have to do. Have the guys actually play basketball and compete.
Yeah.
Because that game, guess what? Guys were defending, guys were competing against one another, and it created a wildly compelling basketball game. They were defending. They were actually playing defense and trying to win the game. That's all they have to do. Just start competing, and guess what? The game will magically get better. That's all.
I covered one, gosh, I don't even remember. It was probably 93 or somewhere around in there, 94. And there was a goaltend at the end of the game, and I went in that locker room, and guys were ticked about the call.
Yeah.
I mean, they were upset. Of course, in those days, if my memory is correct, winning team got $2,000 a player, losing team got $1,000 a player, and they were ticked they didn't get that extra $1,000.
Yeah,
Can you imagine having enough money? Now they have to give these guys $500,000 a piece to play in their stupid in-season tournament if they win.
Yeah, it's dumb.
500,000 those guys got.
And finally, college football is giving us what we want.
Yeah.
This year, like, imagine the playoff. I can't wait until next year. It's just going to be awesome. And I think the one thing that we're seeing with NIL and the transfer portal is the dispersion of talent across the country now, to where it's going to prevent teams like Georgia and Alabama just stockpiling 5 stars who don't get a chance to play immediately.
Yeah,
these guys are going to look to go elsewhere now.
Yeah.
That's going to be good for the game. And the 12-team playoff, I think, is going to be a win because more teams will be playing with guys who are not going to opt out. They'll be wanting to play in the playoff, and it's going to be a made-for-TV event. It's going to be terrific. Those 2 games yesterday were fabulous. Really good.
Yeah, they were.
Quality football.
Better than I expected, actually.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Michael Shacker. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. That kid was only 14 years old who played that national anthem.
Shredding.
Learned guitar just a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to give my high five to Michael Penix in Washington.
Same here.
All right, tomorrow our Trailblazer programming will kick off at 3 with Game Day. Tip-off against the Mavericks at 5:30. Justin Myers will have Rip City Mornings at 6 right here on 620 Rip City Radio.